Hello, everyone. She looked like she was carved from marble. White blonde hair, crystal blue eyes, legs that seemed to stretch into eternity. When Nadja Auermann walked into a room, it didn't matter who else was there. You looked at her, not because she tried to be seen, but because her presence was otherworldly. In the golden age of supermodels, where Naomi stormed, Linda transformed, and Claudia commanded, Nadja hovered. She was the ice queen of the runway, untouchable, almost alien in her perfection. Designers called her the ideal. Magazines called her the future. She had the longest legs in the industry and the coldest stare, and the world was obsessed. But perfection comes at a cost. Behind the sculpted beauty and minimal words was a woman fighting to be more than a body, more than a fantasy, more than a symbol. Nadja Auermann rose fast, played the fashion game with ruthless precision, and then chose to walk away before it consumed her. This is not just the story of another 90s supermodel. It's the story of the most enigmatic face of a brutal industry. The woman who was too perfect to be real and too smart to stay silent. Nadja Auermann was born in 1971 in what was then East Berlin, behind the wall, behind the Iron Curtain, behind the image of glamour the West projected. Her childhood was shaped not by luxury, but by structure, concrete buildings, government rations, quiet streets filled with silent ambition. It was a world of discipline, not dreams. Her parents were not artists or socialites. They were workers, grounded, practical. In East Germany, no one talked about fashion. Beauty was not something to be displayed. It was something to be managed, controlled, kept in line. But Nadja was impossible to ignore. Even as a young girl, she stood out tall, angular, striking in her stillness. People didn't call her pretty. They called her different. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, Nadja was 18. A whole new world opened up. Suddenly, she could travel. She could be seen. She could dream of things that once seemed absurd, like walking for Versace or appearing in Vogue. But Nadja didn't run to the spotlight. She walked toward it, cautiously, calculatingly, with the same quiet intensity she carried as a child. She began modeling in Berlin almost by accident. A scout noticed her, how could they not, and invited her to shoot. Her photos were cold, clean, modern. Editors loved her look part cyborg, part snow queen. She wasn't trying to seduce the camera. She stared it down. There was no fashion lineage in her blood, no obsession with supermodels. But perhaps that detachment made her even more magnetic. She didn't chase fame because she'd grown up in a world where fame didn't exist. She understood silence, and she knew how to weaponize it. Her childhood didn't give her the language of fashion, but it gave her the armor, and that armor would become her greatest weapon on the runways of the world. Nadja Auermann didn't dream of being a model. She didn't grow up rehearsing runway walks or pasting photos of Cindy Crawford on her wall. Modeling was never the plan. It found her quietly, almost clinically, just like she would come to approach the industry itself. In the early 1990s, freshly out of East Berlin and working as a shop assistant, Nadja was approached by a local photographer. Her appearance was impossible to miss, towering at nearly 6 feet with impossibly long legs and a bone structure that seemed too precise to be real. She was unlike anyone else. Her first test photos were stark and minimal, no forced glamour, no heavy makeup, just Nadja, staring straight through the camera. The results were undeniable. Within months, she was sent to Paris, not to try modeling, to become the next face of high fashion. Designers were stunned. She was modernism in motion, a living Bauhaus sketch. Her angles, her icy expression, her uncanny presence, it all felt futuristic. Like the old world had cracked open and revealed a woman born for the new. She walked her first major runway for Thierry Mugler, whose sci-fi aesthetics matched her perfectly. Then came Chanel, Dior, Valentino. Each season, Nadja's name climbed higher not because she courted attention, but because she refused to. She wasn't loud backstage. She didn't flirt with cameras or mingle with celebrities. She stood still, let herself be transformed, and delivered performances that froze entire rooms. In castings, designers would whisper her name like a code. "Get Nadja," they'd say. She's not like the others. While most models were trained to please, Nadja projected power. She didn't ask to be understood. She demanded to be seen. Within 2 years of her first shoot, she had become the face of Vogue, the muse of Stephen Meisel, and the woman whose walk made even veteran editors hold their breath. She didn't rise through fashion. She sliced through it effortlessly, cleanly, icy, and undeniable. By the mid-1990s, Nadja Auermann had become one of the most recognizable and enigmatic faces in fashion. Her look was sculptural, her movements mathematical. She didn't walk the runway, she glided. Every step was exact, every glance calculated. She wasn't a presence you simply noticed. She was one that left you unsettled in awe, in admiration, or in slight intimidation. With her platinum blonde bob and alabaster skin, she became a canvas for the most visionary designers. Karl Lagerfeld adored her restraint. Gianni Versace dressed her in silk and chrome. Valentino trusted her with the softest, most structured gowns. They didn't just want Nadja to wear fashion, they wanted her to become fashion itself. Her campaigns were everywhere. Prada, Dior, Chanel, Dolce & Gabbana, magazines fought for her. She graced the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, often more than once a year. Yet, unlike her peers, Nadja rarely gave interviews. She didn't flirt with the press. She didn't smile for the paparazzi. While other models embraced the new celebrity culture, Nadja maintained a wall of mystery. It wasn't arrogance, it was discipline. Behind the scenes, she was precise, punctual, professional. She didn't party, she didn't gossip. She didn't fall into the glamorous chaos of the 90s supermodel scene. Colleagues described her as quiet but intense, someone who listened more than she spoke, observed more than she revealed. And on the runway, she was unforgettable. One of her most legendary moments came during a Mugler show, where she appeared in a chrome bodysuit with a headpiece that made her look like a deity from another planet. The crowd didn't cheer, they froze. She didn't perform. She simply stood, embodying power without noise. That was Nadja's gift, communicating everything with nothing. While other supermodels thrived on charisma, Nadja weaponized control. She could give the camera nothing, and the lens would still follow her like gravity. In the age of extremes, she was minimalism incarnate. In an industry obsessed with drama, she was the calm in the storm. She didn't just define the look of the 90s, she redefined what fashion could be. In the chaotic landscape of 90s fashion, where scandals sold magazines and personalities sold brands, Nadja Auermann stood apart, not just because of her looks, but because of what she refused to do. She refused to play the media's game. She didn't reveal her private life in interviews. She didn't gossip with journalists. She never used her fame to launch a perfume or a fashion line. She was not there to entertain. She was there to embody. And for an industry that increasingly demanded its models be celebrities, her restraint felt like defiance. Nadja was the image of perfection, but she never used that to please anyone. Instead, she used it as armor. Her icy persona, her flawless bone structure, her mechanical walk, they all protected something far more vulnerable, her right to remain unknown, to remain in control. She said no to opportunities that felt exploitative, no to overexposure, no to the pressure to open up, while her peers danced on talk shows and headlined campaigns with tabloid-fueled drama. Nadja maintained an unshakable boundary between herself and the industry. This wasn't aloofness, it was resistance. Even her modeling choices spoke volumes. She worked with photographers who respected the image as art, not commerce. She preferred stillness over seduction, symmetry over spontaneity. Her body language didn't beg for attention, it commanded it. She was less a muse, more a monument, And yet, the fashion world couldn't look away, because while others conformed to new expectations, Nadja held the line. She didn't chase cultural trends. She didn't adapt to fit changing tastes. She remained utterly herself, even if that self was distant, cool, and unknowable. In one rare interview, she once said, "A picture should say everything. Why do I need to add more?" That one sentence captured the essence of her rebellion. In a world desperate for more content, more access, more noise, Nadja Auermann offered less. And somehow, it made her even more powerful. Her defiance was quiet, but absolute. She didn't need to protest loudly. Her silence was the protest. At the height of her career, Nadja Auermann could have done anything. More runways, more editorials, a crossover into film or business, like many of her peers. She had the fame, the beauty, the connections. But instead of capitalizing on the momentum, she disappeared. There was no public breakdown, no tabloid spiral, just a slow retreat, a deliberate fade from the spotlight. What most people didn't see was that Nadja had started a different kind of journey, one far more radical than staying in fashion. She became a mother. She embraced domestic life. She traded runways and red carpets for playgrounds and privacy. And in doing so, she did something almost unthinkable for a supermodel at the time she let go. Let go of control, of attention, of the industry's insatiable hunger to watch, consume, and discard. There were whispers. Of course, some said she vanished too early. Others speculated about why someone so iconic would leave at her peak. But Nadja never offered explanations. She didn't need to. She had nothing to prove. In later years, she appeared occasionally on selective runways, in a few interviews, in deeply stylized editorials that reminded the world of her enduring power. But she was never trying to reclaim her throne. She had never wanted the throne. Unlike many who crashed out of fashion due to scandal, addiction, or breakdowns, Nadja's disappearance was peaceful, intentional. She had seen the machine, played the game, and when it no longer served her, she simply stepped away. That, in many ways, was her boldest move. Not the Mugler metallics, not the Vogue covers, but the quiet decision to stop to choose life on her terms. Years later, when she returned to the runway briefly, the world paused. She hadn't changed. If anything, her energy was more refined, more grounded. And as she walked elegant, unshaken, it became clear that she had never truly left. She had just stepped outside the frame. She didn't vanish. She chose stillness again. And in that stillness, she found something rarer than fame peace. Nadja Auermann never shouted. She didn't beg for the camera. She didn't sell herself to stay relevant. And yet, she remained unforgettable. Her legacy isn't defined by chaos or controversy. It's defined by precision, by restraint, by the fact that in the loudest decade of fashion, she mastered the art of silence. She made stillness magnetic, made coldness poetic, made distance desirable. Designers still reference her silhouette. Photographers still chase the kind of control she embodied. Models still wish for the power she held not through fame, but through presence. She didn't burn out. She withdrew on her terms. And that, in an industry that eats its stars alive, is its own kind of revolution. Maybe Nadja was never meant to be a celebrity. Maybe she was meant to be a mirror, reflecting not what fashion wants, but what it lacks: discipline, mystery, and the courage to walk away. She didn't just wear fashion, she transcended it.